Maria Santos had worked as a maid in the ancient Blackwood Manor for 3 years, but she had never seen the master of the house during daylight hours. Lord Adrian Blackwood was known throughout the countryside as a reclusive nobleman who conducted all his business after sunset. The villagers whispered strange stories about him, but Maria needed the job too desperately to pay attention to gossip. Every morning, Maria would arrive at the manor with her 7-year-old daughter, Elena. The little girl would sit quietly in the servants' quarters while Maria cleaned the vast halls and countless rooms of the Gothic mansion. Elena was a bright child with curious dark eyes and an unusual ability to notice things others missed. On this particular autumn evening, Maria was polishing the silver in the grand dining room when she heard Elena's small voice echoing from the main hallway. Her heart nearly stopped. The child was supposed to stay in the kitchen area, and Lord Blackwood had specifically instructed that no one should wander the manor after dark. "Sir, excuse me, sir," Elena's voice carried through the stone corridors. Maria dropped her polishing cloth and rushed toward the sound, her footsteps echoing against the marble floors. She found Elena standing in the center of the grand foyer, looking up at a tall figure dressed in an elegant black coat. Lord Adrian Blackwood stood frozen, his pale hand resting on the ornate banister of the curved staircase. "Elena, come here right now," Maria called out, her voice trembling with fear and embarrassment. But Elena didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head and studied the nobleman with the innocent curiosity that only children possess. Lord Blackwood was strikingly handsome, with sharp features and dark hair that fell across his forehead. His skin was unnaturally pale, almost luminous in the dim light of the chandelier above. "Sir," Elena said again, her small voice filled with wonder, "my mom wears a mark like yours." Maria felt the blood drain from her face. She quickly moved toward her daughter, but Lord Blackwood raised his hand, signaling for her to stop. His dark eyes, which Maria had only glimpsed briefly during their few encounters, were now fixed intently on the little girl. "What mark?" he asked, his voice low and careful. Elena pointed to her own neck, just below her left ear. "The same mark you have, sir. Mama tries to hide it with powder, but I see it when she brushes her hair at night." Lord Blackwood's expression changed dramatically. The controlled composure he always maintained seemed to crack, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. He slowly reached up and touched the side of his neck, where a small, crescent-shaped scar was barely visible beneath his collar. Maria's legs nearly gave out beneath her. She had hidden that mark for 8 years, covering it with makeup every single day. It was a reminder of a night she tried desperately to forget, a night that had changed her life forever. A night that had given her Elena. "Elena, we need to go," Maria whispered, finally finding her voice. But Lord Blackwood was already moving down the stairs, his movements fluid and graceful. He stopped a few feet away from Elena, crouching down so he was at her eye level. Up close, Maria could see that his eyes held an otherworldly quality, seeming to shift between dark brown and deep amber depending on the light. "What is your mother's name?" he asked Elena gently. "Maria Santos," Elena replied without hesitation. "She takes care of your house. She says you're a very important man who works at night because you have special business." Lord Blackwood's gaze shifted to Maria, and, for the first time since she had started working at the manor, he really looked at her. She saw recognition dawn in his features, followed by something that might have been shock or perhaps relief. "Maria," he said her name like a prayer or a confession. The memories came flooding back. 8 years ago, Maria had been working as a waitress at a small tavern in the next town over. She was 18, struggling to support herself after her parents had died in a carriage accident. One foggy October night, a stranger had come into the tavern just before closing time. He was elegant and mysterious, with an otherworldly charm that had made her forget every lesson about caution she had ever learned. They had talked for hours. He told her his name was Adrian, and that he was traveling through the area on business. There had been something dangerous about him, something that should have warned her away, but she had been drawn to him like a moth to flame. When he asked her to walk with him in the moonlight, she had said yes. That night had been like a dream. They had walked through the forest behind the tavern, talking about poetry and philosophy, about the loneliness of existence and the weight of secrets. When he kissed her, it felt like coming alive for the first time. But then, something had changed. His kiss became more intense, almost desperate, and she felt a sharp pain in her neck. She remembered the sensation of falling, of floating, of being caught between life and death. When she woke up the next morning, she was alone in her small room above the tavern, with only the crescent-shaped mark on her neck as proof that the night had been real. Adrian had vanished without a trace. No one at the tavern remembered seeing him, and Maria began to wonder if she had dreamed the entire encounter. But, weeks later, when she discovered she was pregnant, she knew it had been real. The child growing inside her was proof of that magical, terrible night. Now, standing in the grand foyer of Blackwood Manor, Maria watched as Lord Adrian Blackwood studied Elena's face with growing amazement. The resemblance was undeniable once you knew to look for it. Elena had his distinctive cheekbones, his elegant bone structure, and something in the way she carried herself that spoke of aristocratic breeding. "How old is she?" Adrian asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 7 years and 4 months, Maria replied, her throat tight with emotion. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment, as if calculating something in his head. When he opened them again, they were filled with a mixture of wonder and anguish. "Elena," he said softly, "would you like to see something special?" The little girl nodded eagerly, completely unaware of the tension crackling between the two adults. Adrian stood and walked to one of the tall windows that lined the foyer. With practiced ease, he drew back the heavy curtains, revealing the night sky outside. The moon was full, casting silver light across the manor's extensive gardens. "Do you see how the moonlight makes everything look magical?" he asked Elena. She pressed her nose against the window glass. "It's beautiful. Mama, and I don't usually see the nighttime here. We're always gone before dark." "The night is when the world shows its true nature," Adrian explained, his voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. "During the day, everything hides behind masks and pretense. But, at night, under the moon's honest light, we can see things as they really are." Elena turned back to him with bright, curious eyes. "Are you sad, sir? You sound sad when you talk about the night." The question seemed to catch Adrian off guard. Maria watched as her employer, the mysterious lord who commanded respect and fear throughout the countryside, struggled to answer a child's innocent inquiry. "I am lonely," he admitted finally. "I have been lonely for a very long time." "Why don't you make friends?" Elena asked with the straightforward logic of childhood. "Because I am not like other people," Adrian replied. "I live differently than most. It makes it hard to connect with others." Elena considered this seriously. "Mama, and I don't have many friends either. We move around a lot because Mama says it's hard to find work. But we have each other, so we're not really lonely." Adrian's gaze shifted to Maria again, and she saw something raw and desperate in his expression. "Yes," he said quietly. "Having family makes all the difference." The word family hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Elena, still oblivious to the undercurrents of the conversation, continued to chatter about her observations of the manor and her appreciation for the beautiful nighttime view. Maria knew she should take Elena and leave immediately. This situation was dangerous in ways she couldn't fully understand. But seeing Adrian interact with Elena, seeing the gentle way he spoke to their daughter, made it impossible to move. For 7 years, she had carried the secret of Elena's parentage alone. She had told her daughter that her father was a traveling merchant who had died before she was born, a story that Elena had accepted without question. "Elena," Adrian said suddenly, "what do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to help people," Elena replied without hesitation. "Like Mama does. She takes care of everyone and everything. She makes sick people feel better and sad people smile. I want to do that too." Adrian smiled, and Maria was struck by how the expression transformed his face. She had never seen him truly smile before, and the resemblance between father and daughter became even more pronounced. "That's a noble goal," he told Elena. "Helping others is one of the most important things anyone can do." "What do you do to help people?" Elena asked. The question seemed to trouble Adrian. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the moonlit gardens. "I protect people," he said finally. "But sometimes protection requires difficult choices." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. There was something ominous in his tone, something that reminded her of the danger she had sensed that night 8 years ago. Elena yawned then, the excitement of the evening finally catching up with her. "I'm getting sleepy, Mama." "Yes, we should go," Maria said quickly, grateful for an excuse to end this charged encounter. But, as she moved to collect Elena, Adrian spoke again. "Maria, I would like to speak with you tomorrow evening. Alone." The request was phrased politely, but Maria could hear the underlying command in his voice. She nodded silently, not trusting herself to speak. As they prepared to leave, Elena suddenly ran back to Adrian and looked up at him with her bright, trusting eyes. "Thank you for showing me the moonlight, sir. It really is magical." "You're welcome, Elena," Adrian replied, his voice gentle. "Sweet dreams." As Maria led her daughter out of the manor and into the cool night air, she could feel Adrian's eyes watching them from the window. Elena chattered happily about their unexpected adventure, but Maria's mind was racing with questions and fears. What did Adrian want to discuss with her? How much did he understand about Elena's parentage? And, most importantly, what kind of danger had she unknowingly brought into her daughter's life by taking this job? That night, as Elena slept peacefully beside her in their small cottage, Maria lay awake staring at the ceiling. She touched the mark on her neck, the mark that had connected her to Adrian Blackwood in ways she was only beginning to understand. Tomorrow evening, she would have to face the father of her child and confront the secrets she had spent 7 years trying to forget. Outside her window, the moon continued its path across the sky, casting shadows that seemed to move and shift with lives of their own. In the distance, Blackwood Manor stood like a dark sentinel against the night, its windows glowing with warm light. Somewhere in that ancient house, the master was probably awake, planning their conversation, deciding what truths would finally be revealed. Maria pulled Elena closer and tried to push away the feeling that their quiet, simple life was about to change forever. Some secrets were too powerful to stay buried, and some encounters too significant to be forgotten. The mark on her neck pulsed with each heartbeat, a constant reminder that the past had a way of finding you, no matter how far you tried to run. The next evening, Maria arrived at Blackwood Manor with trembling hands and a heart full of dread. She had left Elena with Mrs. Catherine Rodriguez, an elderly woman who lived nearby and occasionally helped watch children in the village. Elena had been disappointed about missing another trip to the beautiful mansion, but Maria had promised her they would visit again soon, though she wasn't sure if that would be true. The manor felt different in the twilight hours. Shadows seemed deeper, and every creak of the old wooden floors echoed ominously through the halls. Maria made her way to the main study, where Adrian had requested they meet. She found him standing before the massive stone fireplace, staring into the dancing flames. He had changed from his usual formal attire into a simple white shirt and dark trousers, but somehow this more casual dress made him seem more dangerous rather than less. Without the barrier of formal clothing, Maria could see the lean strength in his frame and the predatory grace with which he moved. "Thank you for coming," Adrian said without turning around. His voice was carefully controlled, but Maria could detect the tension underneath. "You didn't give me much choice," Maria replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Adrian finally turned to face her, and Maria was struck again by the otherworldly quality of his features. In the firelight, his pale skin seemed to glow, and his dark eyes held depths that seemed impossible for any mortal man. "Please, sit," he gestured to one of the leather chairs arranged near the fireplace. Maria remained standing, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I prefer to stand." "As you wish." Adrian moved to pour himself a glass of deep red wine from a crystal decanter. He offered one to Maria, but she shook her head. "I imagine you have questions." "Just one," Maria said, surprising herself with her directness. "What are you?" Adrian's hand paused halfway to his lips. He set the wineglass down without drinking and studied her face intently. "What do you think I am? 8 years ago, I thought you were just a man. A strange, wonderful, dangerous man, but still human." Maria's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "But the way you move, the way you look exactly the same as you did that night, the way Elena's eyes sometimes flash amber in certain lights, the way she never gets sick, never gets tired the way other children do. I think you're something else entirely." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. And if I told you that you were right? If I confirmed your suspicions? What would you do? I would take Elena and run as far away from here as possible, Maria answered without hesitation. And you would be wise to do so, Adrian said softly. But I'm hoping you won't. The honesty in his voice caught Maria off guard. She had expected denials or threats, not this vulnerable admission. Elena is my daughter, Adrian continued, his voice growing stronger. Our daughter. When I saw her last night, when she mentioned your mark, I felt something I haven't experienced in over 2 centuries. Hope. 2 centuries? Maria whispered, the words hitting her like a physical blow. I am what people call a vampire, Adrian said simply. I have been for 237 years. I feed on blood to survive, I cannot tolerate sunlight, and I will live forever unless someone manages to kill me, which is considerably more difficult than the stories would have you believe. Maria sank into the chair she had previously refused, her legs no longer able to support her. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen the evidence. You've carried my mark for 8 years, a mark that should have faded long ago but remains as vivid as the day I gave it to you. You've watched Elena grow, noticed how different she is from other children. Part of you has always known the truth. Maria's hand unconsciously moved to her neck, touching the crescent-shaped scar. What did you do to me that night? I bit you, Adrian said bluntly. I fed from you. But I stopped before taking too much, before killing you. I gave you just enough of my essence to mark you as mine, though I didn't understand the full implications at the time. Yours? Maria's voice flashed with anger. I am not your possession. No, Adrian agreed quickly. Poor choice of words. What I mean is that the mark created a connection between us. It's why Elena exists. Normally, my kind cannot reproduce. We are dead things, animated by dark magic and ancient curses. But the mark I gave you, it changed something in your blood, made it possible for you to carry my child. Maria stared at him, trying to process this information. So Elena is what, exactly? Half vampire? I honestly don't know, Adrian admitted. She is the first of her kind, as far as I'm aware. I can sense the vampire heritage in her, but she also carries your humanity. She may never need to feed as I do, or she may develop those needs as she grows older. Her abilities may manifest gradually, or they may remain dormant forever. The thought of Elena needing to feed on blood made Maria feel physically ill. What abilities? Enhanced strength, speed, and senses. Resistance to disease and injury. The ability to sense emotions and intentions in others. Some vampires develop additional gifts like mind reading or the ability to influence thoughts, but these are rare and usually emerge only after decades of existence. Is that what you did to me 8 years ago? Influenced my thoughts? Made me want you? Adrian's expression became pained. No. I may have many dark abilities, but I have never used them to force affection or desire. What happened between us that night was real, Maria. Completely real. Maria wanted to believe him, but the entire situation felt like a nightmare from which she couldn't wake. Why didn't you tell me then? Why did you disappear? Because I was a coward, Adrian said with brutal honesty. I had been alone for so long, I had forgotten what it felt like to connect with someone. When I realized what I had done, when I saw the mark on your neck and understood that I had bound you to me in ways I couldn't undo, I panicked. I thought you would be safer if I stayed away. Safer? Maria laughed bitterly. Do you have any idea what the last 8 years have been like? Raising a child alone, working whatever jobs I could find, moving from town to town because Elena's differences made people suspicious? I thought I was going crazy. I thought maybe I had imagined that entire night. I'm sorry, Adrian said, and the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. I have watched from a distance, made sure you were both safe, but I know that's not the same as being there. I know I failed you both. You watched us? I hired agents to keep track of your movements, to ensure you had work and safe places to live. When you applied for the position here at the manor, I couldn't resist the opportunity to have you close again, even if you didn't know who I was. Maria felt a mix of fury and hurt wash over her. You manipulated our entire lives. Yes, Adrian admitted. And I'm not proud of it. But, seeing Elena last night, talking with her, I realized I can't continue hiding in the shadows. She deserves to know her father, and I want to be part of her life, if you'll allow it. What kind of life can you offer her? Maria demanded. You're a creature of darkness. You feed on blood. You can't even go outside during the day. I can offer her protection, education, and love, Adrian said firmly. I have accumulated considerable wealth over the centuries. Elena could have the finest tutors, travel the world, want for nothing material. And, despite what I am still capable of caring deeply for those I love. Love? Maria scoffed. You don't even know her. I know she's curious and brave and kind. I know she has your compassion and my stubbornness. I know she sees magic in moonlight and wants to help people when she grows up. I know that in the space of one conversation, she became more important to me than anything else in my very long existence. The raw emotion in Adrian's voice made Maria's anger waver. She could see that he genuinely cared about Elena, but the situation was still impossibly complicated. What about Elena's safety? She asked. Surely there are other vampires who wouldn't approve of her existence. Adrian's expression darkened. There are those who would see her as an abomination, yes. But there are also those who would see her as something precious and unique. I have allies among my kind, and I have spent centuries learning how to protect what matters to me. And what about me? The question slipped out before Maria could stop herself. Adrian's gaze intensified. What about you? If you want to be part of Elena's life, what role do I play in this? Am I just the human who happened to bear your child, or am I something more? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, seemingly choosing his words carefully. That night 8 years ago, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over 2 centuries of existence. When I left, I told myself it was for your own good, but the truth is I was terrified. Terrified of caring about someone who could be taken away from me so easily. Humans are so fragile, so temporary. So I'm just a temporary inconvenience? No, Adrian said emphatically. You're the reason I learned that eternity means nothing without someone to share it with. You're the mother of my child and the woman who showed me I still had a heart capable of love. You're the person I think about every day and dream about every night, even though vampires aren't supposed to dream. Maria felt her resolve weakening. There was something hypnotic about Adrian's voice, something that made her want to believe every word he said. But she had to think about Elena's welfare above all else. If I agree to let you be part of Elena's life, she said slowly, there have to be conditions. Name them. First, Elena's safety comes before everything else. If I ever feel she's in danger because of what she is or who you are, we disappear, and you don't follow us. Agreed. Second, no vampire abilities used on either of us. No mind control, no emotional manipulation, nothing. I wouldn't dream of it. Third, Elena learns the truth gradually. She's only 7. We tell her you're her father, but the vampire revelation comes later, when she's old enough to understand and handle it. Adrian nodded. That's wise. And, fourth, Maria paused, gathering courage for the most important condition. If we're going to be in each other's lives, we need to establish what kind of relationship the 3 of us will have. Are you Elena's father who happens to employ her mother, or are we something more? What would you like us to be? Adrian asked softly. Before Maria could answer, they were interrupted by a commotion from outside. Shouting voices and the thunder of horses' hooves could be heard approaching the manor. Adrian's entire demeanor changed instantly, his casual pose shifting into predatory alertness. Stay here, he commanded, moving toward the window with inhuman speed. What's happening? Maria demanded, fear rising in her chest. Adrian pulled back the curtain and peered into the darkness. His face went pale, which Maria hadn't thought possible given his already ghostly complexion. We have visitors, he said grimly. The kind that travel with torches and weapons. Maria rushed to the window and looked out. A group of roughly 20 men on horseback was approaching the manor, many carrying burning torches. Even from a distance, she could see that they were armed and angry. "Who are they?" she whispered. "Vampire hunters," Adrian replied, his voice deadly serious. "Someone has told them what I am." The implications hit Maria like a physical blow. If vampire hunters were coming for Adrian, and if Elena was half vampire, then her daughter was also in terrible danger. Her protective instincts kicked in immediately. "I have to get to Elena," she said, moving toward the door. "No," Adrian caught her arm gently but firmly. "It's too dangerous. If they see you leaving here, they'll follow you straight to her." "Then, what do we do?" Adrian's eyes had taken on an amber glow, and Maria could see fangs extending slightly from his upper jaw. The transformation was both terrifying and mesmerizing. "We fight," he said simply. The sound of boots on the front steps echoed through the manor, followed by heavy pounding on the main door. "Adrian Blackwood," a rough voice shouted. "We know what you are. Come out and face justice." Adrian looked at Maria with regret and determination. "I'm sorry you're caught up in this. But, I promise you, I will not let anything happen to you or Elena." As the pounding on the door intensified and the shouts grew louder, Maria realized that her quiet life was truly over. Whether they survived this night or not, everything had changed. She was connected to a vampire, mother to his half-vampire child, and now surrounded by people who would kill them all if they discovered the truth. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, surprising herself with her resolve. Adrian looked at her with something like admiration. "Help me protect our daughter," he said. Outside, the hunters were beginning to break down the front door. Inside, a vampire and a human woman prepared to fight for their child's future, knowing that by morning, everything they thought they knew about their lives would be forever altered. The front door of Blackwood Manor exploded inward with a thunderous crash, sending splinters of ancient oak across the marble floor. Maria instinctively moved closer to Adrian as the vampire hunters poured into the foyer, their torches casting dancing shadows on the walls and their weapons gleaming menacingly in the flickering light. "There are passages that lead from this room to the old wine cellars," Adrian whispered urgently to Maria. "From there, tunnels connect to the forest. You can escape and get to Elena." "What about you?" Maria whispered back. "I'll buy you time and then follow," Adrian replied, but Maria could hear the uncertainty in his voice. The leader of the hunters stepped forward, a burly man with graying hair and scars across his weathered face. He wore a silver cross around his neck and carried a crossbow loaded with what appeared to be a wooden bolt. "Thomas Mitchell," Adrian said, recognition clear in his voice. "I should have known you'd come eventually." "Adrian Blackwood, or whatever name you're using now," Thomas replied, his voice filled with hatred. 20 years I've been tracking you. 20 years since you killed my brother. Your brother was hunting innocent people based on rumors and superstition," Adrian said calmly, though Maria could see his muscles tensing for action. "He wouldn't listen to reason." "Innocent?" Thomas laughed bitterly. "You're a monster who feeds on human blood. There's nothing innocent about that." Maria watched the exchange with growing dread. This wasn't just about Adrian being a vampire. There was personal history here, old wounds and grudges that made negotiation impossible. "I feed only on those who volunteer or on the wicked," Adrian said. "I have not taken an innocent life in over a century." "Liar," Thomas spat. "Monsters like you can't change. You're an abomination that should have been destroyed centuries ago." More hunters spread out through the foyer, surrounding Adrian and Maria. She counted at least 15 armed men, all carrying weapons designed specifically for killing vampires. Silver bullets, wooden stakes, holy water, and crossbows with specialized bolts. "Thomas," Adrian said, his voice taking on a different quality, one that seemed to resonate with supernatural power. "You don't want to do this. Take your men and leave. No one needs to die tonight. Trying to use your mind tricks on me, bloodsucker?" Thomas pulled out a small silver pendant. "We came prepared for your vampire magic." Adrian cursed under his breath. The hunters had obviously done their research and brought protective charms. His supernatural abilities to influence human minds would be useless against them. Maria, Adrian said quietly, when I give the signal, run for the passage behind the bookshelf on the far wall. Push the third book from the left on the second shelf. Before Maria could respond, Thomas raised his crossbow and fired. Adrian moved with inhuman speed, but the bolt still grazed his shoulder, drawing black blood. The wound hissed and smoked where the wood had touched his flesh. Blessed ash wood, Thomas said with satisfaction. Burns like acid, doesn't it? Adrian snarled, revealing his fangs fully. The civilized facade he had maintained dropped away, revealing the predator underneath. His eyes blazed with amber fire, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. You want to see a monster? Adrian's voice was no longer human. I'll show you a monster. He moved faster than Maria's eyes could follow, appearing behind one of the hunters and snapping the man's neck before anyone could react. The other hunters shouted in alarm and began firing their weapons, but Adrian was everywhere and nowhere, moving like a shadow made deadly. Run, he shouted to Maria as he disarmed two more hunters and sent them flying into the stone walls. Maria didn't hesitate. She sprinted across the foyer, dodging falling hunters and flying debris. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of supernatural combat, inhuman roars, the crack of breaking bones, and the screams of terrified men. She reached the bookshelf and frantically searched for the third book from the left on the second shelf. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely count, but finally, she found it and pushed. The bookshelf swung inward, revealing a narrow stone passage lit by torch brackets. As she stepped into the passage, Maria looked back one more time. Adrian was fighting like a creature from nightmares, moving faster than should be possible, his strength allowing him to throw grown men around like children. But there were too many hunters, and they were coordinating their attacks. Several had managed to wound him with their specialized weapons. Go! Adrian's voice reached her even over the chaos of battle. Maria ran into the darkness of the passage, tears streaming down her face. The tunnel was old and damp, clearly carved centuries ago as an escape route. Her footsteps echoed off the stone walls as she followed the flickering torches deeper into the underground network. Behind her, the sounds of fighting continued, but they were growing fainter. She prayed that Adrian would be able to escape as he had promised, but a part of her feared she might never see him again. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, branching off in several directions. Maria tried to remember Adrian's instructions about the route to the forest, but, in her panic, everything seemed confusing. She was about to choose a passage that sloped upward when she heard footsteps behind her. Maria! Adrian's voice called out, echoing through the tunnels. She turned and saw him emerging from the shadows, moving quickly but favoring his left leg. His white shirt was torn and stained with black blood, and he had several wounds that were smoking where the blessed weapons had struck him. Are you all right? She asked as he reached her. I'll heal, Adrian replied grimly. But we need to keep moving. I killed 6 of them and wounded several more, but Thomas and the others are still alive. They'll follow us as soon as they regroup. They continued through the tunnels together, Adrian leading the way despite his injuries. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they emerged from a concealed opening in a hillside about a mile from the manor. The forest stretched before them, dark and welcoming. Elena, Maria said urgently. We have to get to Elena. Yes, Adrian agreed. But, Maria, you need to understand something. After tonight, Thomas and his hunters will never stop looking for me. They know where I live, and they know I'm connected to you. Elena will never be safe as long as I'm in your lives. The implication of his words hit Maria like a physical blow. You're leaving again. I have to. It's the only way to protect both of you. No, Maria said firmly. We're not going through this again. Elena needs her father, and I need to know you're safe. Adrian stared at her in surprise. Even knowing what I am? Even after seeing me kill those men? You were protecting us, Maria replied. Those men came to murder you. You did what you had to do. They made their way quickly through the forest toward the village where Elena was staying with Mrs. Rodriguez. As they walked, Adrian's wounds continued to smoke and heal slowly, the supernatural regeneration fighting against the blessed weapon's lingering effects. There is another option, Adrian said quietly as they neared the edge of the village. But it's dangerous, and there's no going back. What option? I could turn you. Make you like me. Vampires are much harder to kill, and you would have the strength and speed to protect Elena if anything happened to me. Maria stopped walking. Turn me into a vampire? The mark on your neck means you're already partially connected to my essence. The transformation would be easier for you than for most humans, and there's a chance you might retain more of your humanity than others do. What about Elena? What would happen to her if both her parents were vampires? I don't know, Adrian admitted. But she already carries vampire heritage. Having two vampire parents might actually stabilize her abilities rather than make them more dangerous. They had reached the outskirts of the village. Mrs. Rodriguez's cottage was just ahead, warm light spilling from the windows. Maria could see Elena's silhouette moving past one of the windows, safe and unaware of the night's dramatic events. I need time to think about this, Maria said. Time is something we may not have, Adrian replied. Thomas will not give up. He'll bring more hunters, and next time they'll be better prepared. They might even threaten Elena to get to me. As if summoned by his words, the sound of horses could be heard in the distance. Someone was coming, and they were coming fast. They tracked us, Adrian said grimly. We need to get Elena and go. Now. They rushed to Mrs. Rodriguez's cottage and knocked urgently on the door. The elderly woman opened it, took one look at their disheveled appearance, and immediately stepped aside. Elena! Maria called. Elena came running from the kitchen, her face lighting up when she saw Adrian. Sir! You came to visit me. Elena, sweetheart, we need to go on a trip, Maria said, trying to keep her voice calm. Right now. Is it an adventure? Elena asked excitedly. Yes, Adrian said, crouching down to her level. A very important adventure. But we need to hurry. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been listening with growing alarm, quickly gathered Elena's few belongings. Is there trouble? She asked Maria quietly. Yes, but it's better if you don't know the details, Maria replied. Thank you for watching her. The sound of horses was getting closer. Through the window, they could see torches moving through the village streets. There's a carriage waiting in the forest clearing behind my home, Adrian told them. I prepared it as an escape route. We can be miles away before they search this area thoroughly. They slipped out the back door of the cottage and into the darkness. Elena held both Maria's and Adrian's hands as they made their way through the narrow alleys and garden paths that led to the forest. The little girl seemed to think this was all an exciting game, chattering quietly about how much fun it was to be up so late. Behind them, they could hear the hunters arriving at the cottage, demanding to know if Mrs. Rodriguez had seen anything suspicious. The elderly woman's voice carried clearly in the night air as she claimed complete ignorance of any unusual activities. They reached the forest clearing where Adrian had indeed prepared a carriage hitched to two strong horses. The vehicle was well supplied with food, water, and warm blankets. Where will we go? Maria asked as Adrian helped them into the carriage. I have a house in Scotland, Adrian replied, climbing into the driver's seat. Remote, defensible, and far from Thomas Mitchell's usual hunting grounds. We'll be safe there while we decide what to do next. As the carriage began to move, picking up speed as they put distance between themselves and the village, Elena fell asleep in Maria's arms. The little girl's peaceful breathing was a stark contrast to the chaos and violence of the evening. Maria, Adrian said softly from the driver's seat. Have you thought about my offer? Maria touched the mark on her neck, feeling it pulse with each heartbeat. She looked down at Elena's sleeping face, so innocent and trusting, and thought about the dangerous world they now inhabited. If I become like you, she said quietly, what happens to my soul? I don't know, Adrian replied honestly. I stopped worrying about my soul centuries ago. But I can tell you that becoming a vampire didn't make me stop loving, or hoping, or caring about others. If anything, having eternity ahead of me made those feelings more intense, not less. Maria watched the moonlit landscape rolling past the carriage windows. Everything familiar was being left behind, but perhaps that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Her old life had been one of constant struggle and loneliness. This new path, dangerous as it was, offered something she had never dared hope for: a true family. "When we get to Scotland," she said finally, "we'll discuss it more. But, Adrian, if I make this choice, I need to know that you're committed to being Elena's father and my partner, not just for a few years, but forever." "Forever is exactly what I'm offering," Adrian replied. "Forever is all I have to give." As the carriage disappeared into the Scottish countryside, carrying a vampire lord, a human woman, and their half-vampire daughter toward an uncertain but hopeful future, the hunters searching the village found only empty cottages and confused villagers who knew nothing about the supernatural drama that had played out in their midst. 3 months later, in a remote castle overlooking the Scottish Highlands, Maria Santos made her choice. With Elena's blessing and understanding of what their family truly was, Maria allowed Adrian to complete the transformation he had begun 8 years earlier. The process was painful but brief, and, when it was over, she emerged as something new, a vampire who had chosen her fate rather than having it forced upon her. Elena, now 8 years old and growing stronger and more confident each day, delighted in having parents who could keep up with her supernatural energy and abilities. Her vampire heritage manifested gradually and gently, guided by 2 loving parents who understood exactly what she was going through. Adrian discovered that having a family gave his eternal existence purpose and joy he had never imagined possible. Maria learned that becoming a vampire hadn't changed her essential nature; she was still compassionate and protective, just infinitely more capable of acting on those instincts. And, sometimes, on clear nights when the 3 of them stood together on the castle walls watching the moon rise over the highlands, Elena would point out how the moonlight made everything magical, just as Adrian had shown her that first night when she spoke to the vampire lord about her mother's mark. The mark that had started as a moment of passion had become the foundation of an eternal family, bound together by love, choice, and the understanding that some connections transcend the boundaries between life and death, between human and monster, between the ordinary world and the realm of magic that exists just beyond the edge of mortal perception. Thomas Mitchell and his hunters never found them. The remote Scottish castle became a haven where a reformed vampire, his chosen bride, and their remarkable daughter built a life that would last not just for decades, but for centuries to come. In the end, Elena's innocent observation about her mother's mark had led to the most unexpected and wonderful revelation of all, that even creatures of darkness could choose to step into the light of love and family. Their story became legend in the Highlands, whispered around fires on cold nights, the tale of the vampire lord who learned to love, the brave woman who chose her own destiny, and the special child who brought them all together with nothing more than a curious question and an open heart.